The phone camera shakes as it captures the scene. A vintage Harley-Davidson sits on the side of Highway 40, smoke rising from its engine, oil pooling beneath it like dark blood on asphalt. The rider, a man in his 50s, with weathered hands and a leather vest covered in patches, kneels beside his dying machine, and there, circling him like a vulture, is a young man with his phone raised high, laughing. His voice carries across the desert wind, mocking, cruel, performing for an audience of strangers who will watch this moment later and click like without thinking twice. Look at this old man and his trash bike, the TikToker says, zooming in on the broken motorcycle. This is what happens when you're too broke to buy a real bike. Should have gotten a Honda, Gramps. The biker doesn't look up. He keeps his hands on his machine, fingers tracing the chrome he's polished 1,000 times. But something shifts in the air, something ancient and dangerous. What happens next will teach that young man a lesson he'll never forget. A lesson about respect, about honor, about the code that exists on these roads, written not in laws, but in blood and brotherhood. This is the story of how one act of mockery became a mirror, and how the road has a way of teaching those who refuse to learn. His name is Marcus Tank Holloway, and he's been riding these highways for 32 years. The patches on his vest tell a story most people can't read. The Iron Wolves MC, the top rocker, says New Mexico. The bottom rocker, his chapter. But it's the smaller patches that matter. The one that says Road Captain. The one that shows 20 years of service. The memorial patch with a name and dates. A brother who fell. Tank isn't just a biker. He's a keeper of traditions that date back decades. Before social media turned everything into content. Before respect became something you could ignore if it didn't get you views. He left his garage in Albuquerque that morning at dawn, heading to a rally in Flagstaff. 300 miles of desert highway. The kind of ride that clears your head and reminds you why you started riding in the first place. The bike beneath him, a 1987 Harley Softail, was his father's. He'd inherited it 15 years ago when the old man passed, and he'd kept it running with his own hands ever since. Every bolt, every piece of chrome, every mile was sacred. But machines, like men, have their breaking points. 40 miles outside of Gallup, something in the engine gave way. A sound like thunder, then silence. Tank coasted to the shoulder, his heart sinking as he saw the oil leak. He'd called his club. They were 2 hours out. He'd wait. That's what you do. You don't abandon your machine, and you don't abandon your brothers. The TikToker's name is Dylan Chase, 23 years old, 40,000 followers, verified checkmark. Brand deals with energy drinks and sunglasses companies. He's driving cross-country in a rented BMW, filming content for his channel. Adventures, challenges, pranks, whatever gets clicks. When he saw the broken-down biker on the side of the road, he saw an opportunity. Comedy gold. The algorithm loves contrast. Young versus old. Success versus failure. The future mocking the past. He pulled over, phone already recording. You need help, old-timer? Dylan asks, but there's no genuine offer in his voice. Just performance. Tank looks up for the first time. His eyes are gray like storm clouds over the desert. He studies the young man, the expensive watch, the designer sneakers that have never touched real dirt. I'm good, Tank says quietly. My brothers are coming. Your brothers? Dylan laughs, panning his camera to the empty highway. I don't see anybody. Looks like you're all alone with your piece of junk bike. He steps closer, zooming in on the oil leak, the worn leather seat, the faded paint. His narration is cruel, each word designed to belittle, to make himself look superior by comparison. Tank's jaw tightens, but he says nothing. In his world, there are rules. You don't start fights over words. You don't give disrespect more attention than it deserves. But you remember, always you remember, this bike's probably older than you, Dylan continues, circling. Why don't you just get a real job and buy something from this century? Or is the whole biker thing just like a midlife crisis that never ended? Something flickers in Tank's expression, a memory sharp as broken glass. 20 years ago, Tank was Dylan, not exactly the same, but close enough. Young, cocky, full of himself. He'd gotten his first bike at 21, a cheap Yamaha, and thought he owned the road. He'd mocked the older riders, the ones who took it seriously, who treated their machines like religion. He'd called them dinosaurs, relics, jokes. Then came the night that changed everything. He was riding drunk through Santa Fe, showing off for a girl on the back of his bike. He took a corner too fast, lost control, crashed through a guardrail. The bike was destroyed. His leg was shattered. The girl, she walked away with minor injuries, but she never spoke to him again. He woke up in a hospital room 3 days later, and sitting beside his bed was a man named Victor Saint Rodriguez, president of the Iron Wolves MC. Tank had cut Saint off in traffic a week earlier, laughed about it, called him slow. Saint didn't come to gloat. He came to offer something Tank didn't deserve, a second chance. The road doesn't care about your ego, Saint had said. It'll kill you if you don't respect it. But if you learn, if you really learn what it means to ride with honor, I'll teach you. Your choice. Tank chose to learn. He spent 6 months healing, another year as a prospect in the club, proving himself. They taught him to rebuild engines, to read the road, to understand that riding wasn't about speed or image. It was about discipline, brotherhood, respect. Saint became like a father to him. And 10 years ago, Saint died on these same roads, hit by a drunk driver who ran a red light in Amarillo. Tank has carried that lesson every day since. He's pulled over for stranded riders. He's given his last $20 to someone who needed gas. He's towed broken bikes with a rope behind his own for 50 miles. Because that's the code. That's what Saint taught him. And now, watching this kid mock everything he holds sacred, Tank feels something rising in his chest. Not rage, something colder, understanding. This kid is who Tank used to be. And life hasn't taught him yet. Dylan's still filming when the first motorcycle appears on the horizon. Then another. Then 5 more. The rumble of engines grows louder, a sound like distant thunder, becoming an earthquake. The Iron Wolves MC arrives in formation. 8 riders, their bikes gleaming in the desert sun, their faces hidden behind dark sunglasses. They pull up around Tank in a semicircle, engines idling, none of them speaking. Dylan's confidence falters. He lowers his phone slightly, suddenly aware that he's outnumbered. The lead rider, a massive man with a beard like steel wool, dismounts. His name is Carlos Hammer Martinez, the current president. He looks at Tank, then at the broken bike, then at Dylan. "We got a problem here, Tank," Hammer asks, his voice quiet but carrying weight. Tank stands up slowly, wiping his hands on a rag. He looks at Dylan, really looks at him, seeing past the arrogance to the fear underneath. The kid's hand is shaking slightly, still holding his phone. "No problem," Tank says finally. "Just a breakdown." And a kid who doesn't know any better. Dylan tries to salvage his bravado. "I was just making content, man. It's not that serious." "Content." Hammer repeats the word like it's foreign. "You were making content out of my brother's pain." "It's just a bike," Dylan says, but his voice cracks. "Just a bike," Tank echoes. He walks toward Dylan slowly, and the young man steps back instinctively. You see a broken machine. You see an old man who can't afford better. You see a joke for your followers. Tank reaches into his vest pocket and pulls out a worn photograph. He holds it up for Dylan to see. It shows a younger Tank standing beside Saint, both of them smiling, their arms around each other. Saint's bike, the same Harley that now sits broken on the roadside, gleams behind them. This bike carried my father on his honeymoon. It carried him to my birth. It carried him to his last ride before cancer took him. I rebuilt this engine with my own hands after he died, because it was the last thing he touched in this world that mattered. Every mile on this odometer is a memory. Every scratch is a story. Dylan's phone is still recording, but he's not smiling anymore. You want to know what that bike is worth? Tank continues. To you, maybe nothing. To me, it's worth more than every click, every view, every empty validation you've ever gotten from strangers on the internet. Because this bike is real. It's blood and sweat and love. The other riders have dismounted now, standing in a line behind Tank. They don't look threatening. They look like judges, waiting for a verdict. Tank makes his choice. Not the choice Hammer expects. Not the choice the code demands when someone disrespects the club. He makes the harder choice. You're going to help me fix it, Tank says. Dylan blinks. What? You're going to help me get this bike running again. And while you do it, you're going to learn what it means to respect something. Real respect, not the kind you perform for a camera. And if I don't? Dylan asks, trying to sound defiant but failing. Hammer steps forward. Then you post that video. And I personally make sure it goes viral. But not the way you want. I'll make sure everyone knows you're the kind of man who kicks people when they're down. I've got friends in the rider community from California to New York. 40 years of connections. We'll make sure that video follows you everywhere. He pauses, letting that sink in. Or you delete it, put your phone away, and learn something today that might save your life someday. Dylan looks at his phone, at the video still recording, at the hundreds of potential likes evaporating. Then he looks at Tank, at the photograph in his weathered hand, at the broken bike that means more than he understood. He stops recording. He deletes the video. What do you want me to do? He asks quietly. For the next 4 hours, Dylan learns what it means to be a mechanic, a student, and something resembling humble. Tank walks him through every step. They drain the oil, inspect the damage, identify a blown gasket and a cracked cylinder head. Parts that need replacing, but temporary fixes that can get the bike running long enough to limp to a proper garage. Dylan's hands, soft from typing on phones and gaming controllers, get covered in grease. His designer shirt gets ruined. His back aches from bending over the engine. He strips a bolt and has to drill it out. Tank guiding his hands patiently. The other riders watch, offering advice, telling stories. They don't mock Dylan. They teach him the way they were once taught. Hammer tells him about the first time he rebuilt an engine, how he put it back together wrong and had to start over 3 times before he got it right. A rider named Maria Ghost Delgado tells him about her first bike, how she dropped it in a parking lot and cried, thinking she'd destroyed something beautiful, until an older rider helped her pick it up and showed her that bikes are tougher than they look. Another rider, Johnny Wrench Chen, shows Dylan how to feel for a stripped thread, how to listen to an engine and know what it's saying. As the sun begins to set, painting the desert in shades of orange and purple, Dylan tightens the last bolt. Tank pours fresh oil into the engine, checking the level carefully. Then he looks at Dylan. You want to start her up? Tank asks. Dylan hesitates, then nods. Tank shows him where to stand, how to kick the starter, how to listen for the first catch of the engine. The Harley coughs, sputters, then roars to life. The sound echoes across the empty highway, powerful and defiant, a machine that refuses to die. Dylan steps back, staring at the bike he just helped resurrect. His hands are shaking again, but not from fear this time. From something else. Or the first tremor of understanding. Tank lets the engine warm up, listening carefully, adjusting the idle. Then he kills it, letting silence return to the desert. You fixed it, Dylan says, his voice strange in his own ears. We fixed it, Tank corrects. You did the work. I just showed you how. He pulls out his phone, his old beat-up smartphone with the cracked screen, and shows Dylan something. A video from 6 months ago. A young rider, barely 18, broken down on the side of a different highway. Tank pulling over, helping him fix a flat tire, making sure he got home safe. I post videos too, Tank says. But I don't post them to make myself look good. I post them to show what the road is supposed to be. People helping people. Riders looking out for each other. That's the content that matters. That's what lives longer than views. Dylan's eyes sting, and he doesn't know why. My dad died when I was 12, he says suddenly, the words spilling out. He used to fix cars. He tried to teach me once, but I thought it was boring. I wanted to play video games instead. We got in a fight about it. That was our last conversation before the heart attack. He looks at his greasy hands. I've been trying to get attention ever since. Trying to matter. Trying to prove I'm not just some kid whose dad died disappointed in him. Tank doesn't say anything for a long moment. Then he places his hand on Dylan's shoulder, firm and steady. Your dad wasn't disappointed. He was trying to give you something real, something that lasts. It's not too late to learn it. Hammer steps forward, reaching into his saddlebag. He pulls out a patch, small and simple. It shows a wrench crossed with a tire iron, and underneath 2 words, Road Helper. This isn't a club patch, Hammer says. You didn't earn that, but this is something else. This is a reminder that you learned something today, that you chose to be better than you were this morning. He hands it to Dylan. Sew it on something. A jacket, a backpack, whatever. And every time you see it, remember that respect isn't about who has the most followers or the newest bike. It's about showing up when people need you. It's about building things instead of tearing them down. Dylan takes the patch with trembling hands. He looks at the 8 riders standing before him, these men and women who could have humiliated him, hurt him, made him pay for his mockery. Instead, they taught him. Thank you, he whispers. 3 weeks later, Tank is in his garage in Albuquerque, working on a carburetor, when his phone buzzes. It's a message from an unknown number, with a link to a YouTube video. He clicks it. The video is titled, The Day I Learned What Respect Really Means. It's Dylan, sitting in front of his camera, but something about him is different. He looks older somehow, more serious. I almost posted one of the worst videos of my life, Dylan says to his audience. I was going to mock an old man with a broken motorcycle, make him into a joke for your entertainment. But instead, I learned something that changed me. He tells the story, all of it. The breakdown, the confrontation, the lesson. He shows his greasy hands, the patch Hammer gave him now sewn onto his backpack. He talks about his father, about respect, about what it means to build instead of destroy. I deleted 40 videos from my channel today, Dylan continues. All the pranks, all the mean-spirited content, all the stuff I made to get clicks at other people's expense. It got me followers, but it cost me something more important. It cost me integrity. He pulls out a photograph, shows it to the camera. It's a picture of him and Tank, standing beside the restored Harley, both of them covered in grease, both of them smiling. I'm going to make different content now. Real content. I'm learning to rebuild engines. I'm volunteering at a motorcycle charity that gives bikes to veterans. And I'm riding, actually riding, not just filming myself pretending to be cool. The video ends with Dylan on his first motorcycle, a used Honda Shadow, nothing fancy but earned. He's wearing proper gear, and he's taking a safety course from an Iron Wolves member. Tank watches the entire video, then reads the comments. Thousands of them. Most are positive, people thanking Dylan for his honesty, for choosing to grow, but it's one comment that makes Tank smile. It's from Carlos Hammer Martinez. You earned something today, kid. Not club colors, not a patch. Something better, self-respect, ride safe. Tank types his own comment. The road is long. The lessons are hard, but if you keep riding with honor, you'll never ride alone. Proud of you, Dylan. He posts it, then returns to his carburetor. Outside his garage, the sun is setting over the Sandia Mountains, painting the sky in colors that no camera could ever quite capture. His father's Harley sits nearby, cleaned and polished, ready for the next ride. Tank thinks about Saint, about all the lessons learned on these roads, about how pain and mockery can become teaching moments if you're brave enough to offer grace instead of revenge. The code isn't about violence. It isn't about dominance. It's about this, about turning strangers into students, enemies into brothers, mockery into understanding. That's the real biker justice. Not punishment, but transformation. He opens his garage door wider, letting the evening air flow in, and gets back to work. There are always more bikes to fix, more roads to ride, more lessons to teach. And somewhere out there on a highway between here and everywhere, a young man who almost became something ugly is instead becoming something real. That's the story worth telling. That's the content that matters. That's the lesson.